Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. While one couple is closer than ever, another could be torn apart this week on Young and Restless. Plus, there is a new twist in Sharon and Phyllis' ongoing saga of captivity. Could time be running out for them? If anything positive came out of Ashley's battle with D, it was that Tracy at long last had found a bit of happiness with Ashley's doctor, Alan. Next week, while out to dinner with Jack and Diane, Tracy tells Alan, "When I look at you, I'm reminded of what it feels like to be completely happy." Alan responds, "If I thought I had a shot, I'd ask you to marry me right now." Of course, turmoil could be headed their way again as Ashley is set to return, and she may be bringing trouble with her. With Sharon and Phyllis still missing, their families have come together in search of the missing women. Claire caught a glimpse of Kyle comforting Summer, and it seemed to get to her. Then there is the fact that her grandfather Victor would rather Kyle be with Summer. Coming up, Claire looks to drown her sorrows. She sits at the bar, takes a sip of the martini, and comments, "That's strong. I guess James Bond is a little tougher than me." Holden appears and says, "Somehow, I doubt that." He sits next to her. Could something come of this chance meeting? Still trapped in the room, Phyllis and Sharon wonder who might be holding them captive and why. Their problems are about to get a lot worse, unfortunately. Phyllis doubles over in pain and exclaims, "Oh my God." Sharon asks what's wrong. Phyllis responds, "I'm so nauseous." Have they been poisoned? Before you go, read the Young and Restless spoilers to find out who Chance shares a lead with and who Jack makes a confession to. The cold stone walls of the tower had long since become a familiar prison to Phyllis. She had counted the uneven bricks 1,000 times, traced the cracks in the mortar, whispered to the tiny spider weaving its delicate web in the corner. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months, with nothing to mark the passage of time, but the slow decay of hope in her heart. She was the daughter of a nobleman, once free to roam the endless green fields of her family's estate, to feel the sun's kiss upon her skin, to laugh with abandon as she raced her mare through the wildflowers. But that life had been stolen from her. Her captor, Lord Aldrich, had seized her in an act of war. An enemy's daughter held as collateral, a bargaining chip to ensure her father's submission. Yet her father did not come. The seasons shifted, and still, no word. No rescue. Phyllis had been strong. She had refused to weep, refused to beg. She had kept her mind sharp with stories, whispered to herself in the long, empty nights. She had resolved to escape, to fight, to endure. But then, slowly, something began to change. At first, it was nothing more than a faint exhaustion, an ache in her bones when she woke. Then came the fevers, burning hot, then shivering cold, leaving her weak and breathless. The food they brought her, stale bread and watery broth, began to taste like ash. Her hands trembled when she lifted the spoon. The mirror in the corner, a cruel reminder of her decline, showed the truth she did not wish to see. Her cheeks sunken, her skin pale as candle wax, her eyes dulled by the weight of suffering. The thought filled her with a strange kind of relief. Perhaps this was the end. Perhaps she would escape this way, drifting away from her cage into whatever lay beyond life. No more waiting. No more hoping in vain. She lay on her cot, staring at the wooden beams above her, too weak to lift her head. Outside, beyond the iron-barred window, the sky was painted with the deep hues of dusk. A single bird, free and unburdened, soared past, disappearing into the horizon. Phyllis closed her eyes. She barely noticed at first, barely cared. But then the door creaked open, and through the haze of fever, she saw him. He stood there, tall and grim, his dark cloak trailing behind him. His sharp, assessing eyes swept over her frail form, and for the first time since her imprisonment, she saw something flicker in them. Concern? No, it could not be. He approached, and she willed herself to turn away, to show him nothing. But her body betrayed her, too weak even for defiance. A moment later, a cool hand pressed against her burning forehead. She forced a bitter laugh, a hollow sound in the silence. "Why? What use am you like this?" Aldrich did not answer immediately. He sat on the edge of the cot, regarding her with an expression she could not decipher. "You are not a pawn, Phyllis. I did not take you simply to be bartered." A shadow crossed his face. He hesitated. "Because I had no choice." She did not believe him. She could not afford to. Yet as her strength ebbed, and she slipped into unconsciousness, His words lingered in her mind, curling around her like whispers in the dark. When she awoke, the air was different. Cooler. The oppressive heat of her fever had lessened. A damp cloth rested on her forehead, and the scent of herbs filled the air. For a moment, she thought she had dreamt it all. But then she heard the low murmur of voices nearby. Forcing herself to turn her head, she saw an old woman kneeling beside a basin, grinding herbs into a thick paste. Lord Aldrich stood near the window, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky. They had not noticed her stir. "She is strong," the old woman was saying, "but strength alone will not save her. She needs proper food, warmth, care." Aldrich exhaled sharply. "Then give her what she needs. You could have done this long ago," the healer said, not unkindly. There was silence. Phyllis closed her eyes, the weight of exhaustion pulling at her again. But before she drifted away, she felt something. Fingers brushing lightly against her own, hesitant yet present. It was not mercy. She could not call it that. And yet, it was something. Days passed, though she barely knew it. Fever dreams haunted her, tangled visions of the past and the present. She saw her father's face, etched with sorrow. She saw Aldrich's, watching her with unreadable intent. She floated between wakefulness and sleep, sometimes feeling the cool touch of a cloth against her burning skin, sometimes hearing hushed voices speaking over her, as though she were a fragile thing that might break if spoken to too loudly. And then, at last, the fever broke. She awoke to the golden light of morning filtering through the narrow window. The world was clearer now, sharper. The aches remained, but they were no longer unbearable. She turned her head, and there he was, sitting in a chair beside her bed, as if he had been there for hours. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Then, in a voice hoarse from disuse, she spoke. "Why are you here?" Aldrich did not answer right away. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Because I do not wish to watch you die." Something about the way he said it, quiet but certain, sent an unfamiliar shiver through her. It was not pity. It was not obligation. It was something else. She studied him, searching for deception, but found none. And for the first time since she had been taken, the stone walls of her prison felt just a little less suffocating. Perhaps she would not escape through death. Perhaps she would survive after all. And perhaps, though she did not yet dare to believe it, her story was far from over.